back. Mr. Sahil Lukman joins us here this morning. He's a former vice chairman, APC Northwest. Good morning. Thank you for coming out today.
Good morning, Chamberlain. Good morning, Morgan.
Good morning.
You know, to a large extent, what you had won previously seems, a lot of it seems to resonate with what Professor Jiga was talking about there, that if we don't do the right things from now to 2027, it may just be bleak. He just spoke about the challenges we face, how he thinks that we are a failing state. But you, about 3 days ago or thereabout, had said that the APC, your party, may lose power in 2027 if they don't do the right things. Because you also did say it appears as though they are very comfortable. They seem to think that they can do anything and get away with it. What gives you this impression, though? What have you noticed?
Thanks very much for the opportunity. I think it is important to emphasize the issue. The critical challenge facing us as a nation is to make our democracy work. After 24 years of uninterrupted democracy, we seem to be stuck in one place. Citizens are not happy with leaders. Expectations of citizens are not being met. We've gone full cycle. After 2011 election, 2012, 2013, we created excitement by proving that PDP has failed. Citizens believe in us as a party when APC came about. And they gave us that confidence. For the first time, we had an election that was not in dispute. The sitting president who lost the election conceded defeat even before the votes the final collation were done. Now, unfortunately, we are not able to build on that. Listening to Professor Jega talking about issues of restructuring, these are issues for me as a party. We sat down for the first time and set up a committee under the leadership of Malam Nasir El-Rufai, came up with what we call the True Federalism Report that did justice. Unfortunately, the party failed to discuss it. And that was a report which, before we even adopted it as a committee, was shared with the president, shared with the party leadership, and they didn't see any problem with it. But taking it forward, we were not able to do that. So the main challenge is really how do we make our democracy work? And my view, rather than sit down and lament, is to begin to creatively think in terms of how do we engage leaders differently. This cycle, we are not happy with leaders, let's go for election, change them, and we get back to the same old mode. Leaders not doing the right thing. I don't think that is what we want.
In trying to understand the why of all of this, is there any reason, do you understand why wasn't that electoral reform or restructuring reports led by El-Rufai, why wasn't it discussed in the party?
Look, I think, like I've argued before, as a party, there are many shades of opinion, many shades of belief, ideas, and in some ways, since the formation of APC, it appeared to be stuck, almost controlled by the conservative bloc. They always have their way. This is a party that can, if you read the manifesto that we have, it's a manifesto oriented to have a party that is social democratic in orientation, which means basically the priority will be social services. Now, since we won election in 2015, the closest we came to that was the issue of social investment, which a lot of funding went into it. But in terms of getting the desired result, which is about reducing poverty and whatnot, getting our education system, health sector much more functional, we've not made much progress. If we want to be honest, we even regressed. So I think, and for me, this is the point why I had to start my advocacy early enough. rather than sit down, my belief, we didn't make the mistake to have President Asuwaju in the first place as the presidential candidate of the party. And I don't think Nigerians made a mistake by electing him. But sincerely speaking, having elected him, having become president, it's not for us to sit back when he takes the wrong decision or take decisions that don't produce the kind of result we want. We applaud him. I think we have to be very critical. We have to shout to the high heavens so that he is able to correct it. And there are many, he has taken many right decisions. If you remember the first 1 week or 2 weeks of his tenure, it produced excitement and his approval rating was high. But thereafter, we crash. For instance, removal of fuel subsidy. Everybody welcome it. But taking the next action that will produce the desired result is what appears to be failing. We must push. I'm a member of the party and I'm a supporter of President Asuwaju. I want him to succeed. I'm not going to sit back and wait until he fails. Then I start saying he has failed and produce some rationalization. We have to just wake up and look, for our democracy to work, the critical issue is that the most important institution of democracy must function, which is the political party.
I've heard several people, some people, also complain that they wonder if the party listens to members with voices like yours. Because if they don't, how then do we expect them to listen to people who are not in their party? Because they will think that they're just critics. Do they really listen to voices like yours?
My view is that they definitely listen, they hear it, they may not accept to work with it, but it's not for us because they don't work with it to retire or resign and just say, okay, let them continue doing what they want to do. For me, which is why, the issue, we have to make our choices in life. Many people's choices are limited to the question of what they can get at a particular moment. Now, one of the questions I keep asking, and I reflected it in several of my writing, is it really the democracy we fought for? Did we kick military out of power simply to end up having almost emperors as our rulers in the name of democracy? Now, if we complain, for instance, under former President Buhari, because his background is military, we can rationalize it. Asuwaju background is not military, and he has some antecedent that prove that he is committed to democratic values. So, if he's doing things that are not producing the result, what is responsible for that? For instance, look. My argument now, which is why I started advocacy, we campaign based on the fact that we said, well, Asuwaju is a talent hunter. He proved that in Lagos. We want that to be reflected in Nigeria. Some of the disappointment, which I didn't hide, was that when it came to the question of appointing ministers and other political appointees, we didn't see that play out. It's business as usual. Politics took over everything. And if we don't come out to remind him, the Asuwaju we wanted to preside over the affairs of this country may not show up to the end of his tenure in 2027. Which means at the end, the country citizens will be shortchanged. And I don't want that to happen. I want the Asuwaju that we believe was the person we wanted to be the president of Nigeria to really show up from the beginning. And unless we can't get it if it is about applauding him, everything he does is right, finding rationalization. Look, one of the things I expected, which even the background report you presented about restructuring prove that we are not even starting on that. I expected the coming of Aswaju will produce some excitement, produce some national debate about where do we go. And then on the basis of that, government and the leadership, President Aswaju himself, are harvesting from the public debate, getting ideas. I mean, look, democracy is not about the wisdom of an individual. It's about competition. Competition not just in terms of election, competition even in terms of ideas.
Well, I know that there is a lot to unpack from the little that you've said so far. I mean, you've spoken about political parties and their role. You've also touched on our democracy as a whole, and also restructuring. Let's focus a bit more on political parties, which you've been a part of. I mean, I think you're still a part of the APC.
I'm still, yes.
You're former former vice chairman of the APC in the Northwest. And I know that I know recently there's been some focus on strengthening political parties and giving them the support that they need to be able to function. You have said they're one of the most important elements in a democracy. Is that correct?
Yes.
Why do you believe so? And what precisely would you say is particularly wrong with political parties now that need to be fixed?
Well, first, I mean, why parties are the most important institution is because they are not expected to only field candidates for election. They are also expected to hold the candidates accountable when they win election. Now, that takes me to the most critical issue. When parties' organs are not functioning, you cannot hold elected people accountable. Your relationship with the elected people will be weak. And the truth about it, which has been the basis of my advocacy, even while I was in the leadership of the party, we must get our parties to respect their constitution. As it is now, almost all our parties don't respect their constitution. Organs of parties are not meeting. In the case of my own party, they are practically frozen.
Why is that?
Because, your constitution, the constitution of APC, for instance, says National Executive Committee, which is the next highest, apart from the convention, the second highest organ, is supposed to meet every quarter. We were elected under the leadership of Senator Abdullahi Adamu in March 2022. Up to August 2023, we had only one National Executive Council meeting, Executive Committee meeting. Now, on August 3rd or 4th, I think on 4th, another Executive Committee meeting was held, which was what produced Dr. Abdullahi Ganduje, the chairman. From August 4th to now, this is almost 4 months of getting into the 5th month. We are due for another National Executive Committee meeting. There is no sign that we are going to have anyone soon. The National Working Committee has appropriated the powers of all organs. They are taking. Meanwhile, this is an administrative body. Now, one of the things, I think in their wisdom, the OWASE panel, as far back as 2007, 2008, through this danger, recommended the unbundling of INEC, out of which they recommended the creation of Political Parties Regulatory Commission. Now, that has not happened. Now, one of the critical problems facing political parties, for instance, the issue of funding is taken for granted. All our parties don't have defined sources of funding. They depend largely on elected leaders to provide the funding, which reduces them to almost subordinate players. Now, once that is the case, you can't expect them to control people who fund them. Now, these are some of the issues that must be corrected. I tell you, for me, after my resignation from the National Working Committee, what I decided to do was to sit down and reflect and document at least some of our experiences from 2001 to 2003 in the party, with all the contestation that
I mean 2001 or 2021?
Sorry, 2021. Thank you for the correction. You know, because as a party, if we didn't wake up to really put our foot down, first President Aswaju wouldn't have emerged as the candidate of the party. You know, so we went through. So after documenting all this, my position is still, okay, we must engage ourselves, engage leaders of the party, to remind them where we are coming. We must now begin to shape our action moving into the future, to always be vigilant. And I mean, former President Buhari, if we have allowed him to do what they call consensus thing, I mean, he will get away with it. We all stood up and engaged him until he agreed to say, okay, let's go to convention and elect our presidential candidate. So we must continue to engage whoever is the president, including President Aswaju, so that we get him to do the right thing. That is the only way citizens can have the benefit of democracy. It's not by propaganda that you sit down and say democratic dividend. And
what are some of the things that right now are giving you concern about how the country is being governed?
Look, I mean, it's not, I don't need to label too much to demonstrate. First, living condition is getting really, really bad. You know, we are almost at the verge of having rebellion in the street. People are struggling for what to eat now. And it become academic to talk of dividends of democracy when and the crash in terms of living condition happened in the last 6 months. You know, inflation, and up to now is going higher and higher. So as a ruling party, it is our business to quickly arrest the situation and ensure that life begin to return to normal and citizens begin to feel better. You know. So these are, if you ask me my concern, this is my concern.
All right, Ayo has got questions for you as well. Go ahead, Ayo.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Well, so one of the questions that was raised by Professor Jega in that comment that we listened to earlier was that maybe we should begin to rethink our presidential system of government, being that it is as costly as it is and quite telling. From where you sit, because there are other countries of the world that practice the presidential system and they are doing fairly well with it. United States, of course, is one classic case. France is practicing the presidential system of government and also. In your opinion and from where you sit, what is wrong with our presidential system of government?
Well, you see, we can go on and on debating whether we should continue with the presidential system of government or not. My view is that take the worst leader we have in Nigeria, take the person to US, where things, for instance, institutions are functioning. The person is likely to succeed. Bring the best from US to Nigeria, the person will fail. So I don't want to really indulge ourselves with the debate over whether it is presidential system of government or parliamentary system of government. I think the challenge we have is to really focus on making key institutions to work. I believe with all the cost, it is possible to make the presidential system of government in Nigeria work. Part of the big challenge, I mean, look. we must get our leaders to be selfless. I mean, some of the excesses you see is likely because leaders overindulge themselves. The other thing, we must also get our leaders to be quite ambitious. I mean, there is a clip, I think it's, what is his name, Olisa Bakoba, that was addressing the president, making the point next year's budget must be not less than 100 trillion naira. Now, I mean, as a nation of over 200 million people, how can we continue to live with a budget of 27 trillion naira, which is less than $30 billion? Our counterpart, check the budget of Brazil, for instance. Brazil run a budget of over $200 billion. Many countries at our level. So part of the issue, part of the challenge, I think I will reduce it to two. If you want any system to work in Nigeria, leaders must be selfless and they must be ambitious to really ensure that the resources of this country are harnessed and deployed to develop the country.
Well, the reason that question is relevant at this point is part of what you raised earlier, when you were saying that you want the president to succeed, but then there are elements who seem to get in the way. How do we navigate that? There are those who have also pointed to our political culture as being faulty. Anytime any party is in power, criticism is fine, but when the only thing it wants to do is just to shoot down whatever ideologies the government of the day has, I mean, some people put questions on that. So in the way we administer ourselves, be it at the federal level or at the state level, what do we need to amend? We employ just the president, but he has to also govern so many other ministries, departments, and agencies, more than 500 of them, which form the engine of the federal government. So those who influence things around the president, what would be your advice to them? And in the event that we're not able to control these people who are mostly faceless, what does Nigeria do, or what do Nigerians do?
I think that is a very important question, but it's not easy to give a straight answer to it. Perhaps my best answer will be to say that we must, as much as, and this is where the party comes in. If the party is functioning very well, we can hold people to account and we can influence, because look, as a party, APC, one of our biggest weakness is inability to influence action of leaders, especially president. We have had situations, I mean, the last election, for instance, in which we had major interest, we want to win the election, yet we have a government that roll out policies which were provocative to citizens, which was almost mobilizing citizens to vote against our party, and I think that has to change. And for me, for that to change, the structures of the party has to be functional. The relationship between the party and the government has to be stronger. It should not be reduced to the question of the president only meeting the national chairman of the party. And I mean, look, like I said, it's an important question, but it's a very difficult question to really give a straightforward answer. It requires sets of action, but more importantly, all those actions must ensure that leaders are made more accountable. Maybe that will help. But we must also, if you ask me, remain confident that these are not problems that are insurmountable. They are problems that can be surmounted, which for me is part of the reason why I still remain committed to my party. I'm believing that we can continue to engage ourselves and find solution to all these issues.
At the end of the day, it's all about governance, Mr. Lukman. At the end of the day, it's about how the lives of the people are affected. Now, you have talked about the party being supreme, but since this republic began, since this fourth republic began, it would seem like that particular ideology in our political system, in our democracy, has gone to the dogs, so to speak. The First Republic had very strong party influence on government. Same with the Second Republic, strong party influence on government. In the Third Republic as well, we had the same situation where the manifesto of the party was jointly, concocted and not just something done by just one individual. And consequently, the political party had a say in who occupies what office, rightly or wrongly, whether it worked or not. What do you think is responsible for the denigration of that particular ideology in this republic, where the party, the opinion on the supremacy of the party, is under the influence of certain political elements, be it at the federal level or at the state level? What happened?
Well, first, I think if you play back very well, you'll find out between the period 1999 and 2003, the party is still very strong. I think the point where consciously, and I think it's under the PDP, the powers of the party were really trampled upon was after 2003, with all the experience where we were told former President Obasanjo had to struggle to win his ticket to recontest. And immediately he came in, he consciously had to make sure the structures of the party are subordinated to him. So he created, that created the current model. And for many of us who were part of the advocacy leading to the formation of APC, one of the things we had hoped was that the emergence of APC will begin to change all of that. I must admit, in a way, our APC is what it is today because we have failed. We have allowed dynamics to play out within the party that almost made nonsense of all the promises we made in 2015. Now, I think where we are now is for us to really, like I said in one of my writings, we have to go back to the drawing board. We have to provoke a situation where we renegotiate what we have. And for me, when I said, I sat down, reflected, document, and the next thing after producing the book, I said, we must find a way to engage our leaders, which is why I said, okay, the book presentation has to be in a format that, and we are making every effort to get all our leaders there. So,
that's APC and transition politics.
APC and transition politics, which is why for me, look, I'm not antagonizing our leaders. Yes, I'm critical, and I'm very open to now express my position, but I don't hide the fact that I want them to succeed. Because as a nation, their success is to the benefit of all citizens. Yeah. If they fail, we will be at the receiving end.
What lessons do you think this government should and can learn from the former one?
Look, I will talk in terms of my knowledge of Asuwaju. I still believe I know him very well. He is not somebody that, you will say he wouldn't listen. The question is, are we really engaging him in such a way that you will see all the side of the argument? Now, once we allow a situation where people lock him in the villa, those of us outside are not able to access him, then we will not be able to get him to really apply himself in the way we expected that he will lead when we produce him as our candidate. And I don't mind moving towards 2027 openly to admit where we have failed based on which, because we are human, based on which we are now planning how to really provide new leadership to Nigeria in such a way that we can't remain where we are forever.
So what do you expect him to do differently from the previous government?
Look. The first thing is that he must open himself and allow party structures to function. And when I say allow parties, we must not reduce parties to just an election vehicle. Go and read our constitution. You will find out that parties are supposed to make input in terms of policies of government. Now, all you hear, and that is why I flag up the warning, all you hear is permutation for next election. Because we are being held by the jugular by some election merchants. All they think is election. I'm not interested. I'm not interested in presenting myself to contest for election. My interest is to ensure that at the best, this country, because we have children, for goodness sake, we pay a lot for school fees, and after they finish, we can't find jobs for them. Is it the country we want? It's not.
So there's this thing that plays out. When, or assuming, if a president is from my part of the country, and then he's doing something, and I see that is wrong, then I keep quiet. Then it comes to another person's part of the country, they're doing something else, rather than speak up, they keep quiet. Or, if the former president happens to be from my political party, and I take over, I see something wrong, and then chances are that maybe he or the hangers-on of the former president might call the current and say, look, don't touch A, B, C, D, and E. So how much of the blame goes to the people and not just the leaders?
Look, Mr. Chamberlain, I made the point earlier. Everything is about choices. I don't know the choice you make. I don't know the choice you make. I know the choice I make. And the choice I make is that I will relate with you without knowing, without bothering where you come from, what religion. And that, for me, first and foremost, you are a human being. Because in the first place, you don't even have a choice who your parents are. And by virtue of that fact, you were not the one that made the choice about your tribe, your religion, And in terms of religion, which is a bit more complex, my understanding of it is that religion is about value, it's about lifestyle. I mean, if you read the history, how religion get convert, it's not about coming to serve. Sometimes it's the lifestyle of the people who that convince others to now say, okay, I want to join this, I want to be like you.
Yeah, Mr. Lukman, but you see, this is the elephant in the room that we need to address as a country if we need to move forward. Because, yes, you have to make your own choices, but you need a critical mass. We need that critical mass of like minds, of people like that.
There are things that are not produced out of debate. I mean, for instance, if I wait for the right signal to emerge for me to do what I will not do what I'm doing at all. As a person, I made my choice to say, well, look, I have limited time to spend in this world. And while I'm in this world, this is what I want to do. And in terms of engaging politics, I want to do it differently. Whether people agree with me or not, it's a different matter entirely. The most important thing, I'm not aspiring to destroy you or destroy anybody, which is why I made the point. I'm not critical of leaders so that I pull them down. I'm critical so that they get it right. Because if they get it right, in fact, I mean, many people some 100 years down the line will not remember that somebody called Salih Lukman was critical, which influenced the action of the leader. But people will remember that there was a president called President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who took the right or wrong decision, and I hope it will be the right decision. And on account of that, he will be celebrated.
Yeah, so leaders must see criticisms as, just trying to ensure that things are done right. They have to be open to some of these things. And it's also important to know that at least we have to get our voices heard out there, which is what you're doing with your book, APC and Transition Politics. So we'll look forward to that. But that's the show today. I beg your pardon. We thank you for coming. We're looking forward to some of these narratives, because there are several questions really that are out there that we haven't got answers for, of which we need to keep asking. And they need to also make themselves available to talk to the people, because those were the promises they made, including the ones that are in MDAs and ministries. It is the people that you're accountable to. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much.
We're back in a moment. Don't go away.